The signal came at 3 in the morning. It was weak and broken, traveling across 47 light-years of empty space before it reached Earth. Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat alone in the monitoring station when his screen lit up with strange symbols. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. The computer worked for several minutes to translate the message. When the words finally appeared on his screen, Jake felt his blood go cold. It was a distress call. Someone out there was dying, and they were begging for help. Jake picked up his phone and called Admiral Lisa Caldwell. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp and alert even at this hour. 20 minutes later, she stood in the command center with 6 of her top officers around her. The holographic display showed a star system far away, and the message played on repeat. "We are the Valorans," the voice said. It sounded like crystal bells ringing in a storm. "Our world is under attack. The Krethax Dominion has sent 3,000 warships to destroy us. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We are scholars and artists. We will all die within 3 days. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. Please." The room was silent. Admiral Caldwell stared at the display with hard eyes. She had served in the Navy for 30 years. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and rebels on Mars. But this was something new. This was aliens asking humans for help. "How many ships do the Krethax have?" she asked. Commander Ryan Hughes pulled up the data. 3,000 confirmed warships. They have been conquering other species for 200 years. Every civilization they attack is either destroyed or enslaved. They harvest other beings for food and resources. Captain Megan Price slammed her fist on the table. "What do we know about the Valorans?" Caldwell asked. "Peaceful species," Hughes answered. "They live for thousands of years. They create art and study the universe. They have never harmed anyone. They have no military, because they never thought they would need one." Admiral Caldwell turned to look at the star map. Earth's fleet had 400 combat ships. 400 against 3,000. The numbers were impossible. Every rule of war said to stay away. Every logical calculation said that going to help would be suicide. She thought about her father, who had served in the old wars on Earth. He used to tell her that the measure of a person was not what they did when it was easy. The measure was what they did when it was hard. "How long until the Valorans are wiped out?" she asked. 72 hours, Jake Morrison said quietly. "Maybe less." Caldwell closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, her decision was made. "Contact the 3rd Fleet, the 5th Fleet, and the 7th Fleet," she ordered. "Tell them to prepare for immediate departure. We launch in 6 hours." The officers looked at each other with shock on their faces. Captain Price stepped forward with concern in her eyes. "Admiral, with respect, we will be outnumbered 7-1. Our ships are good, but we cannot fight those odds." "Yes, we can," Caldwell said. Her voice was calm but filled with iron. "The Krethax have conquered 47 species. Not one of those species came from a world like Earth. Not one of them evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every single day." She walked to the center of the room and looked at each officer in turn. "Do you know what the other species in this galaxy call our planet? They call it a death world. A place so dangerous that nothing should be able to survive there. But we did survive. We did more than survive. We became the most dangerous thing that world ever produced." Commander Hughes nodded slowly. He understood what she was saying. Humans were different. They had been forged in fire and blood and ice. They had fought their way to the top of a food chain filled with predators. They had survived diseases, disasters, and wars that should have ended them 100 times over. "The Krethax think they are predators," Caldwell continued. "They have never met real predators. They have never met us." Captain Price straightened her shoulders. The fear in her eyes was replaced by something else. Something fierce. "I will have the 5th Fleet ready in 4 hours," she said. "Good. Caldwell turned back to the holographic display. Send a message to the Valorans. Tell them that help is coming. Tell them that Earth heard their call. Across the solar system, the message went out. Ships that had been resting in dock suddenly came to life. Crews rushed aboard, and systems powered up. Weapons were checked, and ammunition was loaded. In shipyards and space stations, men and women prepared for war. On the flagship USS Vengeance, Admiral Caldwell stood on the bridge and watched her fleet assemble. 400 ships of all sizes gathered in formation. Destroyers, quick and deadly. Cruisers packed with missiles. Battleships with cannons that could punch through mountains. And 12 Titangen-class dreadnoughts, each one a mile long. Each one carrying enough firepower to burn a continent. It was not the biggest fleet in the galaxy, but it was the most dangerous. Admiral, her communications officer said, I am receiving messages from other species. The Fenari say they will not help the Valorans. They say the risk is too great. The Aurelians send their sympathy but refuse to act. The Synthari have not responded at all. Caldwell felt disgust rise in her chest. All those advanced civilizations, all that power, and none of them would lift a finger to help innocent people. Cowards, she said. The lot of them. What should I tell the Valorans about the other species? The officer asked. Tell them nothing. It does not matter what others do. It only matters what we do. She sat down in her command chair and gripped the armrests. Signal all ships. We jump to hyperspace in 30 minutes. Set course for the Valoran system. The fleet moved into final position. Engines hummed with power. Navigation computers locked onto their destination. Back on Earth, people looked up at the night sky. They did not know exactly what was happening, but they could feel it. Something important was about to begin. Their sons and daughters were flying off to fight for strangers they had never met, in a place they had never seen. The galaxy had many names for planets like Earth. Paradise worlds were gentle and kind. Garden worlds had perfect weather and easy food. But Earth was none of these things. Earth was what the aliens called a death world. On a death world, everything tried to kill you. The weather changed without warning. The ground shook and split open. The water rose up and drowned entire cities. Diseases evolved faster than medicine could cure them. And everywhere you looked, there were predators waiting to eat you. Most species in the galaxy came from easy worlds. They grew up in safety. They never had to fight for survival. Violence was just a word they read in old books. Humans were not like that. Commander Danny Cole stood in the briefing room of the USS Relentless as the ship tore through hyperspace. Around him sat 200 Marines in combat armor. These were soldiers who had fought in wars across the solar system. They had seen friends die. They had killed enemies with their bare hands. They were the best of the best. Listen up, Cole said. His voice was hard as steel. In 5 hours we will arrive at the Valoran system. The enemy is called the Krethax. They are big. They are strong. They have armor on their bodies and poison in their teeth. He paused and looked at his soldiers. Not one of them showed fear. They have never fought humans before, Cole continued. They do not know what we are. Let me tell you something about us. About our home. He pressed a button and images appeared on the screen behind him. Images of Earth, through the ages. 65 million years ago, a rock from space hit our planet and killed almost everything alive. Did life give up? No. It came back stronger. Our ancestors survived ice ages that froze the whole world. They survived volcanoes that blocked out the sun. They survived floods and fires and famines. The images changed. Now they showed ancient humans hunting with spears. We evolved alongside the most dangerous animals you can imagine. Saber-toothed cats that could bite through bone. Bears that stood 12 feet tall. Wolves that hunted in packs. Every single one of those predators tried to eat us. Every single one of them failed. We killed them, or we tamed them. Sergeant Brittany Hayes sat in the front row. She had a scar running down her left cheek from a knife fight on Mars. She had been a soldier for 15 years and had never lost a battle. "What about the Krethax weapons?" she asked. "Reports say they have plasma cannons and acid sprayers." Cole nodded. "They do. And our armor is built to handle both. But here is the thing, Sergeant. The Krethax expect their enemies to run when they get hurt. They expect them to surrender when the battle turns bad. That is what every other species does." He leaned forward with fire in his eyes. "We are not like that. We fight when we are wounded. We fight when we are bleeding. We fight when every bone in our body is broken. Do you know why? Because our ancestors had no choice. On our world, if you stopped fighting, you died. There was no surrender. There was no escape. You won, or you were eaten." Down in the medical bay, Dr. Katie Walsh prepared her supplies. She had treated human soldiers for 20 years. She had seen things that would make other species faint with horror. She had watched Marines crawl into her bay with their guts hanging out, asking when they could go back to the fight. Her assistant, a young man named Chris Porter, was organizing bandages and blood packs. "Doctor," he said, "I have been reading about the Krethax. They are physically stronger than us. They can lift 3 times what a human can lift." "That is true," Walsh said without looking up. "So how do we beat them in close combat?" Walsh stopped what she was doing and turned to face him. "Let me tell you something about human beings, Chris. Our bodies are not the strongest. Our teeth are not the sharpest. Our claws do not exist at all. But we have something no other species has. We have endurance." She walked to a screen and pulled up biological data. "A human being can run for hours without stopping. We can chase prey until it dies from exhaustion. Our bodies can keep going long after they should have stopped. We heal from injuries that would kill other species. We can lose a limb and survive. We can lose half our blood and keep fighting." Chris stared at the data with wide eyes. "The Krethax are strong in short bursts," Walsh continued. "But they tire quickly. In a long fight, they will slow down. They will weaken. But we will not. We will keep coming. We will keep fighting. Until they are all dead, or we are." On the bridge of the USS Relentless, Captain Scott Palmer watched the countdown timer. 4 hours until arrival. 4 hours until the biggest battle humanity had ever fought. His first officer, Lieutenant Amy Drake, stood beside him with a tablet in her hands. "Captain, I have been studying the Krethax battle tactics. They rely on overwhelming numbers and fear. They attack in massive waves and expect the enemy to break and run." "What happens when the enemy does not run?" Palmer asked. "That is the interesting part, sir. It has never happened before. Every species they have fought either fled or surrendered within the first hour of combat. The Krethax have no experience with an enemy that simply refuses to give up." Palmer smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf seeing a sheep. "Then they are about to get an education." Admiral Caldwell's voice came over the ship-wide speakers. "All hands. This is the Admiral. We will exit hyperspace in 4 hours. I want to tell you why we are doing this. It is not for glory. It is not for territory. We are going because somewhere out there, innocent people are dying." They called for help, and no one answered. No one. Except us. Palmer listened with pride swelling in his chest. "The galaxy thinks we are just another species," Caldwell continued. "They think we will behave like everyone else. They are wrong. We come from a world that tried to kill us from the moment we were born. That world made us into something special, something dangerous. Today we show the universe what Deathworlders can do." In the cargo bay, Sergeant Hayes checked her rifle one more time. The weapon was clean and loaded. Her armor was sealed and powered up. She was ready. Private Luke Simmons sat next to her. He was young, barely 20 years old, and this was his first real battle. "Sergeant," he said quietly, "are you scared?" Hayes looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No, she said. I am not scared. I am angry. Those things out there have been killing innocent people for 200 years. And no one stopped them. No one even tried. Well, we are going to try. How can you be so sure? Hayes stood up and checked her weapons one final time. Because I am a human being, she said. And my ancestors did not crawl out of the mud. Survive the ice ages. Kill the saber-tooths. Build civilizations. And fly to the stars, just so I could lose to some overgrown bugs. The human fleet came out of hyperspace like thunder breaking the sky. 400 ships appeared in a flash of light above the Valoran homeworld. Below them, the Krethax armada hung in orbit like a dark cloud. 3,000 warships ready to finish their slaughter. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. The Krethax were so surprised that they could not believe what they were seeing. No one had ever come to help their victims before. No one had ever dared. Admiral Caldwell did not waste those 3 seconds. All ships, she said calmly. Weapons free. Fire at will. The Titangent-class dreadnought USS Hammer of Dawn aimed its main cannon at the biggest enemy ship in sight. The weapon charged for half a second, then released a beam of pure stellar fire. The beam crossed the distance between the two fleets in the blink of an eye and struck the Krethax command carrier right in the center. The carrier was a mile long and carried 50,000 Krethax warriors. It had armor thick enough to stop asteroids. It had shields that could deflect nuclear weapons. None of that mattered. The carrier exploded like a bomb, scattering burning metal across space. Then the real killing began. Human destroyers shot forward at speeds the Krethax sensors could barely track. They weaved between enemy ships, firing missiles and cannons at point-blank range. Human cruisers launched wave after wave of torpedoes that punched through Krethax armor like paper. Human battleships unleashed broadsides that turned enemy vessels into burning wrecks. On the bridge of the Krethax flagship, Supreme Commander Vrexith watched his fleet die. His compound eyes could not process what he was seeing. In 5 minutes, 200 of his ships were gone. In 10 minutes, 500. The enemy was cutting through his armada like a blade through soft flesh. Who are these creatures? He screamed at his officers. Where did they come from? They call themselves humans. One officer replied. His voice was shaking with fear. They come from a death world in the outer arm of the galaxy. A world called Earth. Vrexith felt something he had never felt before. Cold terror running through his blood. Deathworlders. He had heard stories about such beings. Stories told to frighten young Krethax. He had always thought they were just myths. Order all ships to concentrate fire on their largest vessel, he commanded. Destroy it, and the others will break. 300 Krethax ships turned their weapons on the USS Vengeance. Plasma bolts and missiles and acid rounds flew across space in a deadly storm. The Vengeance shook under the assault, its shields flaring bright with energy. But the ship did not break. It did not run. Admiral Caldwell gripped her command chair as her ship rocked from impact after impact. Alarms blared and crew members shouted damage reports. A plasma bolt burned through the outer hull and killed 6 people on Deck 12. Shields at 40%, her tactical officer reported. Hull breaches on Decks 11 through 15. Return fire, Caldwell ordered. All weapons. The Vengeance answered with everything it had. Main cannons, missile batteries, point defense guns, all firing at once. Enemy ships exploded left and right, and then the rest of the human fleet closed in to protect their flagship. The USS Relentless came screaming in from the left flank. Captain Palmer had his ship moving so fast that Krethax targeting systems could not lock on. His gunners fired with deadly accuracy, taking out enemy engines and weapons with surgical precision. Marines, prepare for boarding action, Palmer announced over the intercom. We are going hunting. Sergeant Hayes led her squad to the launch bay. Drop pods were ready, each one holding 10 Marines in full combat armor. The pods would fire across space and punch right through enemy hulls. Remember your training, Hayes said to her soldiers. The Krethax are bigger than us, but they are not tougher. Aim for the joints in their armor. Aim for their eyes. And keep moving. Never stop moving. The drop pods launched. Hayes felt her stomach drop as the pod shot across the void between ships. Through the tiny window, she could see the battle raging. Explosions everywhere. Ships burning and breaking apart. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Then her pod hit the side of a Krethax cruiser and punched through. The impact threw her against her straps, but she was already unbuckling and raising her rifle. "Go, go, go," she shouted. The Marines poured out of the pod into a Krethax corridor. The walls were dark and wet, covered in some kind of slime that the aliens seemed to like. The air smelled like rotting meat. A Krethax warrior came around the corner. It was 8 feet tall with black armor covering its body. Its mandibles dripped with venom and its claws could tear through steel. It saw the humans and let out a scream of rage. Hayes put 3 rounds through its face before it could take a single step. "Clear," she said, stepping over the body. "Move to the engine room. We are going to blow this ship from the inside." The squad advanced through the cruiser, killing every Krethax they found. The aliens fought hard, but they were not used to enemies that did not run. When a Krethax soldier wounded Private Simmons with a claw strike across his chest, the young man did not fall. He raised his rifle with bloody hands and kept shooting until the enemy was dead. "Medic," Hayes called out. A corpsman rushed over and started sealing the wound with foam. Simmons gritted his teeth against the pain. "I can still fight," he said. "Damn right you can," Hayes replied. "Now get up, we have work to do." Back in space, the battle had turned into a massacre. The Krethax fleet was falling apart. Their commanders had never faced an enemy that hit this hard and refused to stop. They tried to regroup, but human ships were everywhere, cutting them off and picking them apart. Commander Cole led his own boarding team onto the Krethax flagship itself. Supreme Commander Vrexith watched on his security screens as human soldiers fought their way through his ship. His best warriors fell one after another. "How is this possible?" Vrexith whispered. "They are so small. They are so fragile." One of his advisors shook his head. "They are not fragile, Supreme Commander. Look at them. They take wounds that would kill our soldiers and they keep fighting. They do not know how to stop." On Deck 7 of the flagship, Lieutenant Nick Torres was proving that advisor right. A Krethax soldier had stabbed him through the shoulder with a venom-tipped claw. The poison burned through his veins like liquid fire. Any other species would have collapsed in seconds. Torres ripped the claw out of his shoulder, used it to stab the Krethax in the eye, and then shot 2 more enemies before falling to his knees. "Medic," he gasped. "And someone get me another rifle. Mine is empty." On the Valoran homeworld below, the crystalline beings watched the battle with wonder. Elder Kithara had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen many things, but he had never seen anything like this. "They came," he said softly. His voice chimed like bells in the wind. "We called for help, and these humans answered. They are dying up there, dying for us, and we are strangers to them." "Why would they do this?" asked another elder. Kithara had no answer. He did not understand humans yet. He did not. The news spread across the galaxy like fire spreading through dry grass. Every species with a communication system heard about what happened at Valora. A single Deathworld civilization had destroyed the most feared military power in known space. 400 ships against 3,000. And the Deathworlders had won. On Fenaris Prime, a paradise world of gentle meadows and calm seas, Ambassador Terrell watched the battle recordings for the 10th time. His species, the Fenari, were peaceful and ancient. They had received the same distress call from the Velerans that the humans had received. They had chosen to ignore it. Now Terrell felt sick with shame. "We could have helped," he said to his aide. "We have 1,000 ships. We could have joined the humans. Together, we might have won, without losing anyone." "The council decided the risk was too great," his aide replied. "The risk?" Terrell laughed bitterly. The humans faced 7-to-1 odds and they did not care about the risk. They went anyway. They died for strangers. And we sat here doing nothing. He watched a human destroyer ram straight into a Krethax cruiser. Both ships exploded together. The human crew had known they were going to die. They did it anyway, just to take one more enemy with them. What kind of beings are these humans? Terrell whispered. What kind of world creates people like this? On the Aurelian homeworld, the ruling council met in emergency session. The Aurelians were scientists and engineers. They had the technology to build weapons that could crack planets, but they had never used those weapons. They were afraid of violence. The humans have changed everything, said Council Leader Vorn. The Krethax Dominion ruled this sector for 200 years. Now they are broken. And the humans did it in a single battle. Perhaps we should be worried, suggested another council member. If the humans can destroy the Krethax so easily, what stops them from conquering everyone else? Nothing stops them, Vorn replied. That is exactly what worries me. We must send ambassadors to Earth immediately. We must learn what these Deathworlders want. In the Valoran system, the cleanup had begun. Human rescue teams searched through the wreckage of destroyed ships, looking for survivors. Medical ships treated the wounded. Engineering crews worked to repair damaged vessels. Admiral Caldwell had lost 63 ships in the battle. Almost 12,000 sailors and Marines were dead. It was the largest loss of life in human military history, and yet, compared to what they had achieved, the price seemed almost small. She stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance and looked out at the Valoran homeworld. The crystalline cities sparkled in the light of the system's star. Millions of innocent beings lived down there, beings who would have been slaughtered if humanity had stayed home. Admiral, her communications officer said, Elder Kithara of the Valoran Council is requesting permission to come aboard. He wishes to thank you personally. Permission granted. Have him escorted to the conference room. 30 minutes later, Caldwell sat across from the strangest being she had ever seen. Elder Kithara was made entirely of crystal. His body was translucent, shifting with colors that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a breeze. Admiral Caldwell, Kithara said, I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen wonders beyond counting. But I have never seen anything like what your people did today. We did what anyone should have done, Caldwell replied. We answered a call for help, but no one else answered. The Fenari ignored us. The Aurelians sent their sympathy, but nothing more. Only your species was willing to fight and die for beings you had never met. Caldwell was quiet for a moment. She thought about the sailors who had given their lives. She thought about their families, back on Earth, who would never see them again. On our world, she finally said, there is an old saying, the only thing necessary for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. We believe that, Elder. We believe it in our bones. When we heard your call, when we heard that innocent people were dying and no one would help them, we could not look away. We had to act, even if it meant dying ourselves. Kithara's crystal body pulsed with emotion. In all his long years, he had never encountered a species with such values. Why? He asked. What made your people this way? Caldwell smiled sadly. Our world made us this way. Earth is not a kind place, Elder. We had to fight for survival from the moment our species was born. That struggle could have made us cruel. It could have made us selfish. But instead, it taught us something else. It taught us that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. It taught us that there is no honor in looking away from suffering just because it does not affect us directly. In orbit above the planet, Captain Palmer was dealing with his own visitor. Supreme Commander Vrexith of the Krethax had survived the battle. His flagship had been captured, and now he sat in a holding cell on the USS Relentless. Palmer stood outside the cell, looking at the creature that had caused so much death. Vrexith was smaller than he had expected. Without his army, without his ships, he was just a bug in a cage. You destroyed everything, Vrexith said. His voice was filled with hatred. My fleet, my warriors, 200 years of conquest, gone in a single day. You brought this on yourself, Palmer replied. You attacked innocent people who had never harmed you. You were going to slaughter an entire civilization for resources. Did you think no one would stop you? Quote, no one ever stopped us before. The galaxy is full of cowards. Everyone runs from the Dominion. Not everyone. Vrexith pressed his face against the bars of his cell. His compound eyes studied the human, with a mix of fear and fascination. What are you? He asked. We scanned your biology. You are fragile. Your bodies are weak. You have no armor, no venom, no claws. How did you defeat us? Palmer leaned closer. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day we were alive. Everything on our planet is dangerous. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even the ground itself. We survived all of it. We conquered all of it. You think we are fragile? We are the most successful predators our world ever produced. He stepped back from the cell. You made a mistake, Vrexith. You picked a fight with Deathworlders. Your species has been the scariest thing in this part of the galaxy for 200 years. Now, there is something scarier. Us. Word of the human victory reached every corner of known space. Species that had lived in fear of the Krethax for generations suddenly had hope. Some of them began to rise up against their conquerors. Others sent messages to Earth, asking for friendship and alliance. On Earth itself, the news was met with mixed emotions. Pride in what the fleet had accomplished, grief for those who had died, and a growing awareness that humanity's place in the universe had changed forever. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Valora. The Krethax dominion was falling apart. Without their great fleet, they could no longer hold their conquered territories. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rising up. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 200 years was crumbling into dust. But there was still one more thing to do. Admiral Caldwell stood before the War Council on Earth. Behind her was a holographic map of the galaxy. One star system was highlighted in red. The Krethax, homeworld. Intelligence reports confirm that the Dominion is gathering their remaining forces for a final stand, she said. They have approximately 800 warships left. Most are older models. And their crews are not as experienced as the ones we destroyed at Valora. They are also building new ships as fast as they can. General Howard Briggs leaned forward. I am proposing that we end this. Not just push them back. Not just defend ourselves, but end their ability to threaten anyone ever again. We take the fight to their homeworld. We destroy their military capability completely. The room was silent. What Caldwell was suggesting was not defense. It was conquest. It was something humanity had never done before. On this scale, President Mitchell spoke from the head of the table. Admiral, we went to Valora to save innocent people. That was a defensive action. What you are describing sounds like an invasion. With respect, Madam President, it is not about conquest. We do not want their planet. We do not want their resources. But as long as the Krethax have a military, they will use it. They have been conquering and killing for 200 years. If we let them rebuild, they will do it again. More innocent species will die. Commander Cole stepped forward. He had been promoted after the battle and now served as Caldwell's chief tactical officer. We have been monitoring Krethax communications, he said. Their leaders are already talking about revenge. They want to rebuild their fleet and come for Earth. They want to make an example of us to discourage anyone else from standing up to them. So we either destroy them now while they are weak, Caldwell continued, or we wait for them to grow strong again and come for us. The council debated for hours. Some argued that humanity should focus on defense. Others pointed out that the Krethax had started this war by attacking the Valorans. In the end, the vote was close, but the decision was made. The human fleet would go to the Krethax homeworld, and they would finish what they started. 3 weeks later, 450 ships gathered at the edge of the solar system. Volunteers had poured in after the Battle of Valora. Everyone wanted to be part of the fleet that ended the Krethax threat forever. Sergeant Hayes stood in the launch bay of the USS Relentless, giving final instructions to her squad. Private Simmons was still with her. The wound on his chest had healed into a thick scar, but he wore it with pride. "This is the big one," Hayes told them. "We are going into the heart of enemy territory. They will fight harder than they did at Valora because they will be defending their home. But that also means they have nowhere to run." Lieutenant Torres had recovered from his wounds as well. The Krethax venom had nearly killed him, but the doctors had managed to save his arm. He carried a new rifle now, with a mark on the stock for every Krethax he had killed. "How do you think they will fight?" one of the younger Marines asked. "Desperately," Torres answered. "That is the problem with pushing someone into a corner. They have nothing left to lose. But it does not matter. We have come too far to stop now." The fleet jumped into hyperspace. 2 days later, they emerged above the Krethax homeworld. The alien planet was dark and wet, covered in swamps and jungles. The cities looked like hives, built from some kind of organic material. Factories churned out smoke and weapons, and in orbit, the remaining Krethax fleet waited. 800 ships against 450. The odds were better than Valora, but still not good. Supreme Commander Vrexith had been left behind at Valora as a prisoner. The new Krethax leader was a war chief named Thrax. He was younger than Vrexith, angrier, and more desperate. He knew that if the humans won this battle, the Dominion was finished forever. "All ships, attack formation," Thrax ordered. The two fleets moved toward each other. Thousands of weapons powered up. Millions of beings held their breath. Admiral Caldwell sat in her command chair on the USS Vengeance. She thought about the sailors who had died at Valora. She thought about the Valorans, who would have been slaughtered without humanity's help. She thought about all the other species the Krethax had destroyed over the centuries. "All ships," she said calmly. "Engage the enemy." The battle began with fire. Human dreadnoughts unleashed their main cannons, cutting through Krethax ships like swords through cloth. Krethax weapons answered back, hammering against human shields. Within seconds, space was filled with explosions and debris. Captain Palmer pushed the USS Relentless straight into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship took hit after hit, but kept fighting. Around him, human destroyers and cruisers swarmed the larger Krethax vessels, attacking from every angle. "Launch boarding pods," Palmer ordered. "We take their ships from the inside." Hayes and her squad shot across space in their drop pod. This time, they targeted a Krethax battleship. The pod punched through the hull, and the Marines poured out with weapons blazing. The fighting inside the ship was brutal. Krethax warriors threw themselves at the humans with suicidal fury. They knew they were fighting for their species' survival. But so were the humans. Torres led his team to the engine room. A massive Krethax guard blocked the door, standing nearly 9 feet tall. Torres did not hesitate. He charged forward, ducked under the creature's swinging claws, and shoved his rifle barrel into the gap between its armor plates. He pulled the trigger until the weapon ran dry. "Clear," he called out as the Krethax fell. "Set the charges. We blow this ship in 5 minutes." Outside, the battle was turning. The Krethax were fighting hard, but they could not match the ferocity of the human fleet. Ship after ship fell. War Chief Thrax watched his forces crumble and felt despair rising in his chest. "How?" he demanded. "How are they doing this? We have more ships. We have more soldiers. How are they winning?" His advisor had no answer. There was no answer. The Krethax simply could not match what they were fighting against. Humans did not care about the odds. They did not care about death. They just kept coming and coming and coming, until everything in front of them was destroyed. The Krethax flagship tried to retreat. Admiral Caldwell would not let it. "Pursuit course," she ordered. That ship does not escape. The USS Vengeance chased the enemy flagship across the battlefield. Human weapons pounded its shields until they collapsed. Then, the shots started tearing into the hull itself. "This is Admiral Caldwell to the Krethax commander," she transmitted. "Surrender now, and your crew will be treated fairly. Continue fighting, and you will all die." For a long moment, there was no response. Then Thrax's voice came through, filled with bitter rage. "We will never surrender to Deathworlders. We would rather die." "So be it," Caldwell said quietly. She turned to her weapons officer. "Destroy them." The Vengeance fired its main cannon one last time. The Krethax flagship exploded in a ball of fire, taking War Chief Thrax and 10,000 of his soldiers with it. Without their leader, the remaining Krethax ships lost all coordination. Some tried to flee. Others kept fighting until they were destroyed. Within an hour, the battle was over. The Krethax fleet was gone. Below, on the surface of the Krethax homeworld, the military facilities were burning. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Krethax Dominion. The galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have imagined. The empire that had ruled through fear for 200 years was gone, and in its place, something new was being built. Admiral Lisa Caldwell, now Supreme Commander of Earth's combined military forces, stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from 63 different species. Some were tall and thin, others short and round. Some were made of crystal, others of gas, others of things that human eyes could barely understand. All of them had come to hear what humanity wanted. "You have questions," Caldwell said, her voice echoing through the great hall. "I can see it in your faces, your forms. Whatever way your species shows curiosity, you want to know what we will do now. You want to know if humanity will become the new Krethax." She paused and let the silence stretch. "The answer is no. We did not destroy the Dominion to take their place. We destroyed them because they were hurting innocent people and no one else would stop them. That is all. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want tribute or submission. We just want to be left in peace." Elder Kithara of the Valorans rose from his seat. His crystal body glowed with soft light. "Admiral Caldwell speaks the truth," he said. "My people owe our existence to humanity. In the year since they saved us, they have asked for nothing in return. They have helped us rebuild. They have shared their technology. They have treated us as friends, not as subjects." Ambassador Terrell of the Fenari stood next. His shame from a year ago had transformed into determination. His species had learned a hard lesson about the cost of cowardice. "The Fenari were wrong to ignore the Valoran distress call," he admitted. "We were afraid. We told ourselves that it was not our problem. While we hid in safety, humans were dying to save strangers. We will not make that mistake again." The Fenari pledged to stand with humanity from this day forward. One by one, other species rose to speak. The Aurelians offered a technology-sharing agreement. The Synthari, who had been silent for centuries, opened their borders for the first time. Even species that had been conquered by the Krethax came forward, grateful for their liberation. But not everyone was convinced. A delegate from the Vorn Collective stepped to the speaking platform. His species was known for their suspicion of others. "Pretty words," the Vorn said, "but actions speak louder. Humanity has proven itself capable of terrible violence. How do we know you will not turn that violence against us someday?" Caldwell met his gaze without flinching. "You do not know," she said honestly. "Trust must be earned, not demanded. All I can tell you is what we believe. On our world, we have a saying. With great power comes great responsibility. We have power now, more than we ever had before, and we take that responsibility seriously." She gestured to the star map that floated above the council chamber. "Look at the galaxy. There are thousands of species out there. Many of them are peaceful. Many of them cannot defend themselves. For too long, predators like the Krethax have preyed upon the weak. That ends now. Humanity will protect those who cannot protect themselves. Not because we want something from them. Not because they pay us. Simply because it is the right thing to do. On Earth, the changes were visible everywhere. The shipyards that had once built a few dozen vessels a year now produced hundreds. Young men and women volunteered for military service in numbers never seen before. Schools taught alien languages alongside human ones. Scientists from a dozen species worked together in research labs. Sergeant Brittany Hayes had been promoted to lieutenant commander. She now trained new recruits at the Fleet Academy in Colorado. Her classes were always full. Everyone wanted to learn from the woman who had boarded enemy ships and fought Krethax warriors hand to hand. "Why do you want to join the fleet?" she asked a room of young cadets on their first day. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. Her name was Emma Sullivan, and she was 18 years old. "Because I watched the Battle of Vellora when I was 17, Emma said. "I saw what our soldiers did. They flew across the galaxy to save people they had never met. They fought against impossible odds. Some of them died, but they never gave up. I want to be like them. I want to protect people who cannot protect themselves." Hayes nodded slowly. It was the right answer. "That is what this is about," she told the class. Not glory. Not conquest. Protection. We are the children of a death world. We know what it means to struggle, to suffer, to face death, and keep fighting anyway. That makes us different from other species. It gives us a responsibility. When someone calls for help, we answer. That is who we are. In the Velloran system, a permanent human defense station orbited the crystalline world. The monument to the fallen had been completed. 12,000 names carved in crystal that would last forever. Every day, Vellorans came to pay their respects. Lieutenant Torres had been assigned to the station. His arm still ached sometimes where the Krethax venom had burned him, but he wore that pain like a badge of honor. He spent his free time learning the Velloran language, trying to understand the beings his friends had died to save. Elder Kithara visited him often. The ancient crystalline being was fascinated by humans. He had lived for 3,000 years, but he had never encountered anything quite like them. "I have been studying your history," Kithara said one afternoon. "Your species has done terrible things. Wars, genocide, cruelty, beyond measure. And yet, you also show incredible kindness, sacrifice, and love. How can both exist in the same beings?" Torres thought about the question for a long time. "I think it is because of our world," he finally said. "Earth forced us to be strong. It forced us to be violent, but it also forced us to work together, to care for each other, to build communities that could survive when everything else was trying to kill us. We are capable of great evil, but we are also capable of great good. The choice is ours to make. And what choice has humanity made now?" Torres looked out the window at the Velloran cities sparkling below. "We have chosen to be protectors," he said. "Not because we are saints. We are not. But because we know what it feels like to be hunted, to be afraid, to face death with no one coming to help. We will not let others feel that way, if we can stop it." Back on Earth, President Mitchell gave her final address before leaving office. She stood before the same United Nations Assembly, where she had announced the Krethax War. "When I took this office," she said, "humanity was alone in the universe. We knew there was life out there, but we had never met it. Now we are part of a galactic community. We have allies, friends, and yes, some who still distrust us. That is fair. We have much to prove." She smiled at the assembly. "But I believe we will prove it. Not through conquest, not through force, through our actions, day by day, year by year. We will show the galaxy that Deathworlders do not have to be monsters. We can be guardians. We can be heroes. We can be the ones who answer. When someone cries out in the darkness. In homes across Earth and beyond, people watched her speech. Children looked up at the stars and dreamed of joining the fleet. Soldiers checked their weapons and prepared for the next mission. Scientists worked on technologies that would help defend the innocent. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars. Not as conquerors, but as protectors. Not as predators, but as guardians. The galaxy had called for help. Earth had answered, and they would keep answering, for as long as there were cries in the darkness and hands reaching out for salvation. This was what it meant to be human. This was the gift that Earth, in all its danger and hardship, had given its children: the strength to fight, the will to endure, and the heart to care for those who could not fight for themselves. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was not without hope, because humanity was watching, and humanity would always come. The end. Human bombers had targeted every factory, every shipyard, every weapons depot. The Dominion would never threaten anyone again, but the civilian population was left alone. Caldwell had given strict orders. They were not here to commit genocide. They were here to end a threat. The Krethax people would survive. Their military would not. As the last fires burned out, Admiral Caldwell looked down at the alien world. She felt no joy, only exhaustion and relief. "It is over," she said softly. "It is finally over." The galaxy had a new power, and that power had just proven that it would fight to protect the innocent, no matter the cost. The Krethax had learned that lesson the hard way. Now everyone else would learn it too. President Diana Mitchell addressed the world from the United Nations headquarters. "Today, our sons and daughters proved something to the galaxy," she said. "They proved that humanity will not stand by while innocent people suffer. They proved that we will fight for what is right, even when the odds are against us." The Krethax thought they could destroy an entire civilization without consequences. They were wrong. There are consequences now. We are the consequences. In the Valoran capital, a monument was being built. It would list the names of every human who died in the battle. 12,000 names carved in crystal that would last for millions of years. Elder Kithara stood before the unfinished monument and wept tears of crystal. He had never known beings like these humans. He still did not fully understand them. But he knew one thing for certain: the galaxy had changed. A new power had risen. And for the first time in centuries, the universe had protectors who were not afraid to fight. Understand that some beings would fight and die for nothing more than because it was the right thing to do. Above, the Krethax fleet was crumbling. 2,000 ships were gone. The rest were trying to flee. But Admiral Caldwell was not finished. "Pursuit formation," she ordered. They wanted to destroy an innocent civilization. They do not get to run away from the consequences. The human fleet gave chase, hunting the survivors across the stars. By the time the last Krethax ship escaped into hyperspace, fewer than 300 remained from an original force of 3,000. The battle was over. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never be the same again. She put her hand on his shoulder. "Remember what you are, Private. Remember where you come from. The galaxy is about to find out why nothing on Earth could kill us." The fleet flew on through hyperspace. 400 ships filled with soldiers who had been shaped by the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. They were going to fight an enemy that outnumbered them 7-1, and they were not afraid at all. That was what humans did. They heard someone crying for help, and they answered. Admiral Caldwell took a deep breath. In 6 hours, her fleet would arrive at Valora. In 6 hours, they would face an enemy that outnumbered them 7-1. In 6 hours, the galaxy would learn what Deathworlders could do. "All ships," she said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Caldwell. Today we go to war. Not for territory, not for resources. We go to war because innocent people are dying, and we are the only ones willing to help them. Make me proud." Make Earth proud. The countdown reached 0. 400 ships vanished into hyperspace, tearing across the stars toward destiny. The Krethax had no idea what was coming,